How's it going, Diablo player? So sorry it took me so long to get this Incinerate build going, but I was pretty busy, and this is going to be my last build guide for the season. I will probably make another build guide which is going to be Ball Lightning, which is going to be for the PTR. But now let's get into the build. So Incinerate is recently buffed by roughly 400% I would say, and it does crazy amounts of damage. It's probably the fastest boss killing build right now. It really kills bosses within like 1 or 2 ticks. That being said, the build is relatively slow, so this is nothing for speed farming pits, this is not for Infernal Hordes, this is not for Kura's Undercity, and this is not for Helltide. This is however very good for like pit pushing. If you still want to get your glyphs to tier 100, it's pretty easy to do it with this build. You can easily do tier 95 plus pit, you can easily do tier 100 pit, no problem. Incinerate gets its bonus damage from the key passive Combustion. And as always Blizzard these days, the tooltips are completely wrong. It says that it's gonna buff your damage based on the damage you do to burning enemies. Well, that's actually not true. It buffs your damage based on your burning damage. But it also does it in kind of a weird way. Either the tooltip is gonna be bugged, or the tooltip is gonna kind of mix up multiplicatives and additives for its damage calculation. Nobody really knows, and I think at this point nobody really cares and wants to find out. So let's just say what we know, which is gonna boost the damage for your Combustion passive as we know it right now. First of all, it's going to be the additive damage part of your torch glyph. So where it says damage, fire damage over time, which is basically damage to burning enemies, burning damage, however you want to call it, it buffs your Combustion glyph. Second is going to be the aspect of Conflagration, which also says to buff your burning damage. And third, it's going to be your Burning Instinct Paragon Glyph. Why ever it's going to be the Burning Instinct Paragon Glyph, I cannot tell you. It has something to do with the tooltip in the burning damage. So the 90% multiplicative actually for the tooltip gets count as additive, and these 90% additive then count into the Combustion tooltip. We don't know if it's just a tooltip bug or if it really increases the damage. It doesn't matter, since you're always going to pick the Burning Instinct glyph anyway. You know, we don't know if it actually double dips, triple dips, or whatever. Those are the 3 components basically buffing it. You don't need to go for Flame Feeder or damage to burning specifically. It's not going to buff your Combustion, it's just going to be a wasted stat. So that being said, let's go into the actual guide. Make sure to check the sections of this guide in the description down below. We have tier 90 pit, and we have tier 100 pit, and we have all the other stuff. So without further ado, let's start with the skill tree. Taking a look at the skill tree, we put 2 into Firebolt just to reach Incinerate here, and then we max out Incinerate into Destructive Incinerate, then we go for 3 into Elemental Dominance, 1 into Flame Shield, 1 into Teleport, into Shimmering Teleport, 3 into Glass Cannon, 1 into Ice Armor, into Mystical Ice Armor. Here, if you struggle with cooldown on your Ice Armor, you can always switch this little bit of extra damage towards your Shimmering Ice Armor if you want. This is really, if you have a lot of cooldown reduction, you can use Mystical Ice Armor, but, you know, it's absolutely no issue if you want to play Shimmering Ice Armor here. And then we go for 3 points into Energy Focus. It helps to give you a little bit more barrier in this build, since this is a very, very tanky build variant, and we don't really need the points anywhere else anyway. Then we go for Familiar into Invoked Familiar for the 10% extra damage. We go for Ice Blades into Summoned Ice Blades, Lightning Spear into Invoked Lightning Spear. We go for Align the Elements into Protection and Conjuration Mastery and Mana Shield. Then we go for 3 into Inner Flames. We go into 3 into Elemental Synergies, 3 into Evocation, 1 into Permafrost, 3 into Hoarfrost. Then we go for 1 into Fury Surge, 3 into Endless Pyre, 3 into Soulfire, and I have 2 in Worms here. And then we go for 1 into Causing Currents and 3 into Electrocution. And last but least, our key passive is going to be Combustion. For our skills, we go for Ice Blades and Lightning Spear. We want to do this between fights. If we're in a fight, we never want to cast Ice Blades, only in between fights. And if we are in a fight, we want to cast Lightning Spear on cooldown still. Then we have Flame Shield. This really just needs to cast in dicey situations whenever you get crowd controlled or whatever. Then we have Familiar. Also, you only want to cast this between fights. So if you're like doing a boss, you don't want to stop casting Incinerate to put a new Familiar. As you can see, it lasts 16 seconds. So just cast these 3 Familiars whenever you finish a pack before you enter the next pack. And then Incinerate obviously is our main damage spell here, and Ice Armor you want to always cast on cooldown. So for enchantments, I play it a little bit different. You want to have Incinerate enchantment, it just does crazy damage. It feels like it is the strongest enchantment for Incinerate, especially if they overlap, you can get these nice 40 billion numbers. So as you can see, it spawns one serpent every 7 seconds and it lasts for 8. So there's actually 1 second overlap where you actually have 2 serpents incinerating. It's just like a optical effect. It doesn't really matter that they overlap or whatsoever. But that is the situation where you can actually get the 40 billion crits there. And I play Teleport Enchantment. I just cannot deal without it. I don't want to have Teleport on my bar. The cooldown is way too long. So I still recommend playing Teleport Enchantment in this build. If you don't want to play Teleport Enchantment, you want to go a little bit slower, you would play the Firewall Enchantment here. It gives you 30% extra damage whenever mobs standing in a firewall. However, I feel like it's not that strong because the uptime in boss fights I feel like was less than 50% on the Firewall enchant, so I kind of still opted for Teleport enchant. I like it much more, and it also gives me this nice 30% extra damage reduction. For the items instead, let's go through the items first, and then after that we cover the gems and rune words. So you want to go for Heir of Perdition, and ideally you want to have greater FX core skills and just put everything into core skills. We don't need crit, we don't need lucky hit, we don't need movement speed, we really just want the 7 to core skills and the 60% extra damage. Then we use Shroud of False Death, ideally put everything into all stats if you can get it, and greater FX on all stats is also very nice. For our gloves, we want to get greater FX Intelligence. Ideally, you want to have greater FX Incinerate here and damage over time. You want to temper fire damage and chance to freeze. And you want to put the aspect of Conflagration on here. For our pants, we're gonna get greater FX Intelligence. Ideally, you want to have a greater FX Maximum Life as well. Again, I put Chance to Freeze on here, and we want to have Ice Armor Duration. Ice Armor Duration really helps with sustaining your Ice Armor. And then we want to obviously have the Snovweiled aspect, because we need permanent Unstoppable. So we cast Ice Armor, we're gonna get Unstoppable. If we're not Unstoppable, our Incinerate is gonna be interrupted, and it's not gonna feel very good. For our boots, we go for Rakanos Wake. I just can't deal without the cooldown reduction on these boots. You can also get regular boots with an Exploiter's aspect if you really want to, but I really feel like the cooldown reduction here helps a great deal. For our stuff, we want to get Aspect of Overheating for the maximum damage bonus here. We want to have greater FX Intelligence and greater FX damage over time again, ideally. We temper fire damage and we temper chance to Incinerate to deal double damage. And ideally, we want to triple crit Incinerate to deal double damage. For Amulet, mine is not the best one, but still fairly good. You want to have Intelligence, and you want to have Endless Pyre, and you want to have, for example, Glass Cannon. Inner Flames is fairly weak, but you know, this is still decent enough. Then you want to temper fire damage, and you want to temper familiar duration. And for Masterworking, you just want to hit Endless Pyre, Intelligence, or Glass Cannon there. Any of these are pretty much the same. I think Intelligence will be a little bit weaker, but still, it's a good hit for your tempering there, for your Masterworking. So, and we put on the Flamethrowers aspect here for Incinerate to split into 3 beams, and actually not doing less damage, but now doing more damage than before. Then we want to have a Rasha ring. Really, only thing here matters is cooldown reduction. Try to triple crit cooldown reduction if you can, and get as close to 25% as possible. And then last but not least, you can play a regular ring. Ideally, you want to have greater FX attack speed and greater FX intelligence here. We temper fire damage and familiar duration again. So why greater FX attack speed? I really like having more attack speed in this build. It just helps when recasting your conjurations. It just goes much faster. If you don't have any attack speed, like casting those 3 familiars takes forever because the animation is so slow. So I feel like getting a little bit of attack speed really helps here. So that's for the items. Let's go for the gems and rune words. I like to play double topaz in my armor pieces, and then I play rune word in my 2-handed weapon and my armor here. So first of all, I'm going a very defensive way. You don't have to do this. I'm going to explain you a different way to play this. So I'm playing Liz mod here to get Dark Shroud every 1.8 seconds. Dark Shroud makes you really, really tanky. It's like a 60% damage reduction or even more. And then for the second one, I play Soul Cry here because it gives me 150 on invoking a skill from another class. So as you can see, I get 1 Dark Shroud every 1.8, so every 3.6 I actually get a Vortex here. So Vortex is very important. The build absolutely doesn't work without it. You cannot skip this. It really, really helps you tremendously grouping up those mobs. For gems, we obviously get 4 skulls for the armor cap. So you can play different runes if you want. So what you can do is you can play the Neo rune here instead of the Xor rune, which is, so you would basically switch to Liss and Cry. So you do the Vortex whenever you stand still. And then your second rune word is going to be Neo with either the sad one here for Spirit Wolves, which freeze a lot, and you do a little bit more damage to frozen enemies, so this gives you a little bit extra damage, and it's, you know, if you really don't have the survivability, freezing the mobs helps a great deal. Or you can go for the Frost Nova here, for the Tool rune here. It helps putting on Vulnerable. I feel like it's not that great. I rather wanted to have the very, very tanky variant with the Dark Shroud here, but you can definitely play this with one of these 2 runes instead. For the Paragon, I always choose this layout now because it's easier to switch boards. I know this is not the most efficient way of passing through the Paragon boards. So if you really want to min-max, you can definitely squeeze out a couple of more points by, you know, putting the boards in a different order here. But, you know, I don't really want to rebuild my Paragon for every single build, so that's why I always keep like this kind of layout here. So for the first board, we go for all the max life we can get, and we put in our Pyromaniac here. Pyromaniac is a very good glyph now, since it gives you like an 18% multiplicative damage increase. Then the next board is going to be the Fundamental Release, and we put in our Torch glyph here. So Torch glyph buffs your fire damage over time, and that stacks with your Combustion key passive. So Torch glyph is a very important glyph, and this board gives you 79 willpower, which is the highest willpower you can get of any of the boards. We mainly pick up all the damage reduction. We don't really want to get the armor or the ore resistance. We don't need it. Again, more damage reduction here, and this gives damage to burning damage. We don't need the critical strike damage. It's gonna do absolutely nothing for us at all. Then the next board is going to be the Burning Instinct. We pick the Burning Instinct node, obviously, because this gives us damage burning damage bonus here. We put in our Eliminator glyph here. I know people like to play Control glyph. I really don't like to play Control. It's way too conditional for me. So I stick with Eliminator here for the 25% multiplicative damage bonus. If you have more points, you can obviously fill out all these int nodes. I just don't have enough Paragon points. And we pick up everything damage reduction wise here and just get the burning damage in the middle. Again, critical strike damage does not matter for this build at all. And the next board is going to be the Enchantment Master. We pick the glyph because we get more uptime on our Incinerate enchantment and also on our Teleport enchantment. We put in our Elementalist glyph here just for boosting the nodes. And we pick up the attack speed, non-physical damage, and again, all damage reduction and life we can get. Armor, not so important. Last but not least is going to be the Frigid Fate board for 60% damage buff. We pick up all the vulnerable damage reduction here and here. We get the nodes, and we put in our Tactician glyph here for even more damage increase for these nodes. For the Mercenary, I go for Subo here because mainly we have Molotov, which gives us a 30% increased damage over time for 3 seconds. So Molotov is once every 11 seconds, and for 3 seconds you get this. So this is roughly a 25% uptime. And then you can get Snipe with Incendiary. It knocks back the mobs a little bit, but, you know, it helps you a little bit on bosses. But still, like, this is just a 20-second cooldown for a 3-second Molotov. So the uptime on this is very little, so I kind of don't opt for it. I rather go for the explosive charge here with the cooldown reduction, which helps a little bit more than actually getting this very, very rare 30% damage over time increase here. And for my second Mercenary, I go for Heir, and I just go for Bastion on Incinerate here. I really tried all these other conditions here with becoming, you know, injured or whatever. They all don't seem to work for me, so I just, you know, let him cast this, like, dome whenever he wants randomly. For consumables, I still play Elixir of Advantage too. It helps a little bit with Lucky Hit Freeze and also gives me more attack speed, which I really like to get my summons out much faster. And you can obviously play Gillian's Brew here for 20% more damage if you like to. I just feel like Elixir of Advantage plays better for me. And then for the instance here, I'm going for Storm of the Wilds for the extra max res. I'm going for the Redamin Buzz for the extra max life. And I'm going for Chorus of War for this little bit of extra damage there.